welcome back to Word of Truth. So, personal election, emerging is a process. Personal election, emerging is a process. So, for those of you who are maybe new to this ministry, have never heard that term before, what am I talking about? So, the term personal election is the term that we use when we're talking about the process of sonship that God takes us through to become sons of God, to fulfill the calling and the destiny that He has for us. Personal election is the transition stage that we use to define where, if you think about, I'm going to use this example, this is the first edition of my book, The Process of Sonship. I'm going to read something from here in a moment, but the process of sonship, so the personal election is what we call the emerging, this part here, when the butterfly is emerging from the cocoon. It's equivalent to when Jesus resurrected from the grave, okay? And so it's basically when you see the promise of God, so that promise that He spoke over your life all those years ago, it's when you actually step into that, but as the title of this video says, the emerging is a process. Emerging is a process. So we can just have this image of, you just come out of the cocoon just like that. It's just it is a suddenly, because when the time comes, it is a suddenly. It's a suddenly when the cocoon splits. It's a suddenly. But the actual coming out, the actual, if you've ever watched a butterfly emerging. So because I wrote this edition in 2015 and it was released January 2016. And as I said, I've been writing the second edition since January 2016, because when the Lord had me write this book, I was pretty much only about here, so what we call the education phase. And so a lot of the book I wrote just by revelation, not by experiential knowledge, like having gone through it yet. It was by faith, by revelation. And then obviously, and I thought, and as the Lord said to me, that the reason I had to release it was for my fellowship group at the time, but mainly for me. And it's been such a blessing for me as I've been going through the process myself. And so, for the Lord to be saying to me from the end of last year that, we're in an emerging, and just the struggle with that. But that's just really what I'm going to speak about in this video. That emerging is a process. I think if I think about where my mindset was, even when I wrote this book at the time, I would have thought that emerging, this personal election, I would have thought that's the end of the process. But when the Lord's revealed to me, Torema, the personal election is not the end of the process, clearly, because there's still more. There's still more, as we can see. There's still more. And so that's what we're talking about in this video. The personal election, emerging is a process. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to read this, the transition 3, personal election. It's called a transition for that reason, because it is a transition. You're moving from the place of being inside the cocoon to actually coming out and being here. So it's a transition from this place to this place. And so this is a transition. It is a process, just like this was a process to get into the cocoon, or to come out of the egg was a process. So the whole process as a whole, but the transitions, that's why they're called transitions and not phases, because they're not the set in stone. You're moving on to the next part of your metamorphosis, or your next part of your state of being, because obviously this is your life. Your life is a process and the journey never ends. However, there was a journey to become the butterfly, and so this is now coming out of the cocoon as a butterfly. You're a new creation, a new creature. Obviously you can't say creation, because we know when we don't use that term. We use that term when we're talking about being saved, etc. But using it in terms of the analogy of from a caterpillar to a butterfly, you're a completely new being. I'm going to read the beginning of this chapter from the first edition. There's, like I said, the book is bigger. Anyway, when it comes out, be blessed. It should be able to, as I said before, to certain people that know, I've said this before, but when the book is out, it will be available as a PDF for free on our ministry website, but it will also be available to buy as a paperback copy and as a Kindle copy. So, on to this. Kingship, this is what it says at this time. I'm going to read the chapter, I'm not going to read that part, but so, the appointed time has finally arrived. The day of emergence has come. Within the chrysalis, the butterfly begins to move. All eyes watch on in wonder as they await the revealing of this beautiful yet mysterious creature. The process is slow, delicate, and deliberate. The butterfly cannot rush its emergence. Every part of its newly formed body must make it in order to reveal the new glory that it holds. All eyes watch on in wonder as they await the revealing of this beautiful yet mysterious creature. The chrysalis becomes transparent. Already we can see glimpses of the colours that the butterfly boasts. Vibrant, bold, majestic. All eyes watch on in wonder as they await the revealing of this beautiful yet mysterious creature. Split. The chrysalis opens up like a veil into a chamber of exquisite delight. The butterfly begins to appear, agile, strong, alive. All eyes watch on in wonder as they await the revealing of this beautiful yet mysterious creature. And then it happens. The first flit of the wings, as it breaks forth fully in grace. Nothing of the old is seen, simply all things have been made new. Purposefully hanging from the chrysalis, the butterfly waits. All eyes watch on in wonder as they await the revealing of this beautiful yet mysterious creature. But why does it wait? It waits because yet there is more. In patience, the wings expand in strength and glory. Once full size, the wings begin to beat as if breathing for the first time. They flap in magnificence, revealing their beauty and mystery. And then, with its antennas erect, the butterfly waits once more as if from a signal from above. So for me, that's really my depiction of the process or the transition when a butterfly is coming out of the cocoon. It's what the Lord had me watch. There's loads of videos on butterflies coming out of their cocoon, and just seeing the delicacy, the slow, deliberate delicacy. Like, the Lord has taken all this time to get you to a place where you go through a process of death to the cross and actually die, fall into the ground and die, and your roots go down. And that's really what the personal exclusion, which comes before the personal election, this phase here is where the metamorphosis takes place inside the cocoon. And it's really a place where, when you think about the scripture that Jesus said, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it abides alone. And so your personal exclusion has been a process of you dying. So you went through death, but the personal exclusion is where that seed dies in the ground and the roots go down. So if the roots don't go down, there can be nothing that comes up. And sometimes we think that, and I've mentioned this in a previous video, in the public exclusion video, I mentioned this about the fact that where my mindset was in 2017, because I made that video in 2017, but 2016, 2017, but 2017 is where the Lord was really revealing to me what I'm going to read now, the scripture, Mark 4 verse 28. Mark 4:28. And it says, "For the earth bringeth forth fruit of herself, first the blade, then the ear, after that the full corn in the air." The process of the seed coming out of the ground. First the blade, then the ear, then the full corn in the air. And it's basically this idea that the seed doesn't go to the ground and immediately shoot up. It just doesn't happen like that. There is the whole journey and process of it. The seed going to the ground and dying. That's where the seed opens up, the roots go down. That's your public exclusion. That's what happened in the grave, in the cocoon. That's what happens. However, when the Lord says now is the time, it's now, like it says, the chrysalis splits. It's when the seed, you begin to see something above ground. It says, unless you die, you abide alone. It's when you begin to produce fruit. And that's really what the transition of the personal election is, when you begin to produce fruit. And producing fruit, you've got a bud, or like I said, you've got the blade, you've got the ear, then the full corn in the ear. And that's when you can multiply. That's when you can actually you can fulfill the Lord's commission of being fruitful and multiplying. So the coming out of the cocoon, the emerging of the cocoon, the personal election is really the transition of where your fruit is now visible for all to see. Because in your public exclusion, it's called public exclusion because publicly you look excluded. Publicly you look to have failed. Publicly you're not in the position that you've declared and believed that the Lord has promised you. You're not in that position of promise as yet. Whereas when you come into your personal election, that's when it begins to be seen. That's when you personally are now visible, and people can see who it is that the Lord has made you to be. People can see the fruit, begin to see the fruit in your tree. But obviously, like I said, the process of the seed coming out of the ground is not just it comes out of the ground and it's a fully fledged tree straight away. Even when we looked at the butterfly, and as I described it in the book, is that it comes out, when the butterfly comes out, it's all shriveled up and crinkled. Its wings are all crinkled up. You've been in the cocoon for however long. I've been in the cocoon now for like the last 3, nearly 4, like if I was to get all the way to this year, that would be like 4 years of being in the cocoon. Well, 3 years fully, right? 3 years fully plus 3 years plus in the cocoon. You're all crinkled, yeah. But that's where the transition. That's where you died to being a caterpillar and you've come out something completely different. Okay, there was a journey to get there, and now this journey of getting out, you're different to what you was when you came in. And so the butterfly, it takes its time, because nothing can be damaged, nothing can be lost. Everything the Lord has been teaching you has to be applied. I guess that's a really good way to say it, which is the Holy Ghost just gave me that. It's like all the things you've learned, all the things that He's placed in you, and now have to be applied as you're coming out as a butterfly. And so you come out. So the coming out of the cocoon, you can see the colours. It looks magnificent, but you can't see it fully still. Then it's a process of pumping all the blood into its wings, and its wings expand in full size and strength. And you're like, wow, this butterfly is beautiful. You see the fullness of the butterfly, but guess what? It doesn't fly off straight away. It actually waits, and that is really the trademark of a son. You've become so used to waiting on the Lord that it's what you know, it's what you expect, it's what you're like, okay, Lord, now what next? Because you know that He's called you to multiply, but there's a waiting before you just go off and do. You are led by the Spirit. That's what the whole journey has been about, becoming the son of God. And so, yeah, that's just amazing. And so, the personal election is really where you see that fruit. It's going to read Psalm 1. So it says, verse 3, "And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper." In his season. And when you think about a season, you think about spring even. It's like, you don't just get, the flowers don't just go from nothing to poof, a flower, like, just like that. There's a bud, then it begins to grow, and that's the transition. That's the personal election. There's a bud. It's basically very slow, delicate, and deliberate. And it's very trying, it's very testing, but that's what the Lord has given you the capacity to go through it. That's what, and the thing is, because you have now learned, you've gone through the process of learning obedience through suffering, you're like, this might hurt, whatever, but at the end of the day, it's, your life is not my will but yours. That's your life now. That is literally your life now. And literally you're like, I'm not going to run off and go and do my own thing or try to do it in my own strength, because I know I can't. Let me just go one day at a time as the Lord is taking me, and trust in Him and believing that you're gonna see the full bud. The fact He's taking you all this way around means that He's gonna do what He promised He would do. So I'm gonna use what I've been going through the last 3-4 weeks as a practical analogy. So the last 3-4 weeks I've been having my bathroom and kitchen renovated. So I'm making this video earlier in March, so I don't know if I want to put it out straight away or near the end of the month, but my previous video, Where the Truth, the February 2019 video, clearly I was in a different place. That's because my bathroom and kitchen were getting done. Now the story of the bathroom and kitchen is that where I live now is the flat that I grew up in. Okay, so as a family, we've had this flat in our family for about 25, nearly 26 years. Okay, so when I got married, we didn't live, obviously we had our own place. We lived somewhere separate for the first 3 years of our marriage. Because my mum was then getting married, she moved out, and then because this place was actually cheaper, where we were renting was actually better for us financially, we moved back into this place. So as a family, 25, 26 years of living here, there's been a 17-year wait of supposedly getting a new kitchen and bathroom. So can you imagine, for 25 years you've had the same kitchen and bathroom, which is ridiculous anyway. But basically, with 17 years back was when they first said we were going to get a new kitchen and bathroom, and it never happened for 17 years. But I'm going to say personally, because obviously most of those years I would have been a child, but as an adult, so from when we moved back, which was 2013, so that's nearly 6 years ago. So let's say from 6 years, when we first moved back, we were literally told that we're going to they sent letters that we're going to do your kitchen and bathroom. So I'm going to use this as an analogy. So 2013 was when we received the promise. And this is equivalent to, before we start the process, the Lord gives us a promise. Before you begin the journey, the Lord gives you a promise for your life. This is who you are, this is who I'm making you, this is the promise. Joseph had the dream, etc. Moses, from when his baby, everyone knew Moses was going to be deliverer. So you had the dream. David was told, anointed as king from then, but there was a journey. So you have the promise. So we had the promise of a new kitchen and bathroom 2013, 6 years ago. Then so you got that. Then we went through this long wait. No, then it took forever, a long waiting period before we even got to the place of them saying we're coming to do. So there's a long wait. Within that wait, we had like surveys. They drop a plan, it falls through. Surveys drop a plan, it falls through. Then fast forward to 2018. So that's now 5 years. Is now, for me, what I would say is the equivalent to the exclusion. So you go through this process of just like being stripped because you're like, the hope is there, but then you think it's coming, but it's not coming. It's coming, but it's not coming. And it's like the Lord's doing all these things in you. The specific of the process is not what I'm really talking about in this video. I'm just talking about personal election and just really emphasizing that it's a process in this video. If you want to understand more of those things, you can get the book, 2nd edition when it comes out. 1st edition is still available, I think, on Kindle. And obviously you can read all the information on our website and you can watch the videos that I put out. However, for me, 2018 would be the equivalent of, if we're talking about the exclusion, because 2018 was now where the vision became more of a reality. For me, the public exclusion, when you're in the grave, when you're in the cocoon, that's when the vision becomes more of a practical reality. The Lord is giving you specifics. You're seeing the vision. Before it was a dream. Now this has become a reality. You can almost taste it. However, the time has not arrived. You just have to allow the Lord to change you. So when 2018 came, we had the surveys again, but this time, and we've got you've got the plan. You've literally got the physical plan in front of you. You know what this kitchen's going to look like. You understand that they're going to come. They're actually making steps forward. But you have to wait for them to now tell you, now we're going to do it. We're going to start the works on this day. And that's the equivalent to when we say the appointed time or bearing fruit in his season. There's this time when the Lord will say, now is the time, when it's the season of fruit to be manifested. There's a season. So we can think of a seed and we can think suddenly as all of it happens, but when you think about a seed and the blade appearing, that's the suddenly. It's like, oh my gosh, there was nothing for so long, and then I see the blade all of a sudden. And so that's the sudden. So we got the phone call or the text is like, we're ready to start your works. We want to start it on Wednesday the 13th of February, and that was suddenly they're ready to start the kitchen work. They went through this long waiting period of nearly 6 years, and then suddenly the appointed time arrived. So we had the promise, we had the wait, and then, like I said, even the wait can be broken down. So even if I'm talking about the process, we could basically say all the time up into the cocoon is the wait. It's all the wait, but there's specifics. And I'm saying that, specifically when for me with the kitchen and bathroom, when they actually were coming and doing the things that are necessary to build the plan of what they're going to do, that was the specifics of that part where it became more of a practical reality. It's actually going to happen now. It's not just something so far in the future that's never going to happen. It becomes a reality in your, like, you can taste it. Faith, hope, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Like, it becomes tangible for you. And so they said, we're going to start the work. Suddenly they're going to start the work. Now, the Lord has been teaching me, because even in this process of the kitchen and bathroom getting done, this is what's really birthed in me the teaching of even though he was already showing it, but it was a practical example. It's a process. So now they're starting the works. They come. We had to do the whole thing of moving everything out of the kitchen and bathroom to make room for the new. And to be honest, even in my life, I've seen the Lord doing that for me over the last year. So it's like the Lord slowly had me making room in my life. Making room in my life in all the different areas, making room in my life, like getting ready for what's new, making room. You have to make room for what he's going to bring in. As you've gone through this whole transition, this whole transformation, but now it's like you need to make room in your ministry, in your home, in your relationship, make room for what he wants to do, the new he wants to do, right? And so they start the work. They said in the letter it's going to be messy. It's the same way the Lord can say when the personal election time comes, when the promise comes, it's a process, and we can hear it, but then we're like, we didn't anticipate the process when it actually comes. So they come, they said it's going to be messy the first few days, blah, blah, blah. I didn't anticipate the mess, guys. I didn't anticipate the mess. I think, I'm very much order. I need stuff to be in order. I need things to be tidy. And I've struggled greatly with the whole mess and all that kind of stuff. And just seeing the process. But then what I really want to emphasize is the fact that in them doing the kitchen and bathroom, it's a process, but this time it's a very slow, like we read in the book, it's slow, delicate and deliberate. But even though it felt because they took 3 weeks to do it, because they just worked on the working days, and they took 3 weeks. They had one person come in each day to do something, and again, that's just a lesson for this. First the blade, then the ear, then the fulcrum, then the ear, because it's like one day at a time the Lord has you building, and for the longest time it just looked like nothing. When I had no sides in the kitchen, it was so hard. Everything was just so hard. Like, to just do a simple thing of cook something so simple, it's so hard, because it's like, where am I going to chop? Where am I going to do anything? But basically, the process of emerging is literally that one of, you are preparing for what the Lord has for you, one day at a time. And for a long time it looks like nothing, and then suddenly you look up and you've built, not just saying like you've built of your own self, but there's this is what he's been building through you. This is what he's been building. This is what he's been preparing. And I just thought that that's so amazing. So the process of personal election, the process of emerging, is very intentional. It's very intentional, slow and deliberate. It's slow and deliberate, but it's intentional. And there's actually stuff, there's actually things happening. But for a good while, it's only when it all comes together that's when we can say that's the suddenly, or it looks like it. Even though the suddenly was when they gave me the date, but it was like, even in the process of them building and them renovating, for the first week or so, I just was like, oh my gosh, this is so long. It doesn't look like anything. What's going on? And then it's like, suddenly they put up the structure, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually see what's happening here. And then it's like, after that, when it's decorated and all that, it just feels like things kind of go a little bit faster, and you don't feel as overwhelmed. But at the beginning, when there's no structure, I think that's the word, when there's no structure, because there has to be structure for what the Lord's called you to do. At the end of the day, there's got to be some form of structure. So you're waiting for him to give you that structure. Once you have it, it's like, oh my gosh, I can see where we're going now. I can see more clearly what's going on. And I just thought that's really, really amazing. And that was a very, very good practical analogy of what it's like when the time finally comes. When the time finally comes for you to emerge from the cocoon, and the Lord is ready to, basically, you're ready to receive the promise. It's a day by day, step by step by step. And yeah, that's what I was going to say. So it's going to talk about responsibility. So even though I was like, at the beginning, I was just like, oh, I can't wait for this process to be over. What I realised is that in the process, in the fact that the Lord makes it a process for you coming out of the cocoon, it gives you time to prepare. Because at the end of the day, as much as you'll get to enjoy, as much as I get to enjoy my kitchen and bathroom, which only just finished yesterday, by the way, I now have a job, responsibility to tidy up my house, responsibility to put everything back, responsibility to make sure it stays clean, responsibility to look after it well, to steward it well. And so that is really, even though you can feel like you want the process of emerging to go a little bit quicker, to see what he's doing a bit quicker, you have to just trust him, because in the journey, the Lord is preparing you and getting you to prepare for the responsibility that he's going to come upon you. Like I said about making room and then building structure and actually preparing you for what's to come. Luke 12:48 says, but he that knew not and did commit things worthy of stripes shall be beaten with few stripes. For whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required. And to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more. So we're talking about responsibilities. To whom much is given, much is required. For what the Lord has called of you, much is required. And it requires responsibility, and it requires stewarding well. And so the slow step by step is so that you can steward well, so that you can prepare for what's to come. When you think about the Jesus resurrecting, yes, he resurrected in one day, but he didn't ascend straight away. It was like for 40 days, he manifested himself to his disciples, preparing them for the next phase. So you can read, obviously, Jesus resurrected, then he ascended, which is the next phase, the true ultimate of what he was going to do. Because without his ascension, there's no church, there's no Holy Ghost operating, and there's no church as the body moving about the earth. So that was the realness of why he resurrected, not just so that he one can resurrect, but so that the rest of us could too. And so in you becoming fruitful, in you emerging in your personal election, it's not about you just being one fruitful, it's about you multiplying. But the personal elections transition is about preparing so that you can multiply, preparing for the people that are going to come into your, that you're going to minister to, that are going to come into your ministry, that are going to work with you. And so it's about preparation. Romans 8:19 says, "For the earnest expectation of the creature waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God." So the manifestation is the process. You don't just reveal everything like all at once. It's like you get seen, but to reveal and to help people to understand it's a process, it's a journey, and preparation is necessary. It's about stewardship. And so why the Lord doesn't just drop everything into your lap all at one time and it's slow delivered, so that you could just like when you learn to walk originally, like now you've got to learn to use your wings. So it's a step by step. As you get stronger, you could take on more, and the Lord is very kind. He's good. He's a good father. He's really a good father. So yeah, the personal election is all about preparation and revealing us for the fullness of our ministry. It's preparing us for those who were called to serve. And just if I just use examples, so as I said before, the personal election is depending on what the Lord's called you to do, in terms of depending on which part of the body He's called you to serve, in terms of basically who He called you to serve. Has He called you to serve the local body, the civil body? Has He called you to serve the cross-cultural body or the social body? Like, who has He called you to serve? Who are the group of people that you were assigned to? Yeah, depending on that, that's specific of to how that will look specifically. But as a general sense, your personal election is where you step into the promise, okay, but you're preparing for the ultimate calling, which is the multiplication, because the promises was where you saw. If you think about all the things everybody saw, the promise of Jesus resurrecting, that was about Him. The promise of Joseph being prime minister, that was about Him. However, they didn't, not Jesus, or Jesus might have been, but basically Joseph, for example, didn't know that it was so that he could save his family in Goshen. He didn't know that part of the vision. He just knew the promise. And so we see up to the promise, but there's more. So we're talking about the butterfly, it waits because there's more. There's more. Emerging, you coming out is not the end. There's more, so that you can start the process again, and it continues. So just quickly going through. So Jesus' election, He resurrected. His elevation, He descended. He prepared His disciples for 40 days, and they had to wait for 50 before the Holy Ghost came. David, his election, he was king of Judah. His elevation, he was king of Israel. So you see, there's more. So there was a promise, but then there's more. Paul, he was released for the work, and he had his itinerant ministry, and he was ministering and planting church and all those kind of things. But there was more. There was a way he was going to reach the Gentiles that was greater than just doing it in physical. He had to write epistles. He had to write the scriptures. Here we are today as the Gentiles, as the nations of the world, being ministered to through his ministry. If he never done the beginning bit, going and planting, who would he write epistles to? So the Lord knows what position He needs to put you into as He resurrects you, elects you, and puts you into a position of promise. But it's to prepare for what He really wants to do, the fullness of what He wants to do, the ultimate call. Moses, he delivered the children from Egypt, but the fullness of that was to actually make them a real nation, to give them commandments, to give them laws and structures, to give them the pattern for the tabernacle. If He never delivered them, what people was God? What people was that going to be for? How would we have that pattern today? We wouldn't have it. Joseph, he saw himself as governor, he saw himself as prime minister, and that was his position of promise, the palace. But actually providing a province, being providing a father to his family in Goshen, and as how the line of Jesus was able to be preserved, that was the ultimate calling. And so we see that the personal election is not the end, it's literally the beginning. It's the beginning of a life as a butterfly, and it's a process, it's a transition for that reason, because the Lord is such a good, He took so much time to get you here, so much time to get you to die to yourself, to get you to die in the ground, to get you to be to go through the process of metamorphosis, to go from a caterpillar to a butterfly, to give you the vision, to give you His heart, like all these things. So He's not going to throw it all away as you're coming out and just say, okay, you've done all that in the spirit, now let's do it in the flesh, you just go and run all by yourself. It's like, nah. Sons of God wait on their Father. They wait, so that they move in tune with Him. So what they're doing is not just them. So just basically the obedience continues. You really learn obedience, and through that you just really learn that I can't do this. I can't do what God wants me to do. I can't get myself to be in a position of promise. God is the one who promised it. He's the one who has to finish it. He who started a good work in me has to bring it forth, has to complete the work. And I trust him to do that. And so, yeah, you can go up and down in the challenge and the trials, whatever. But at the end of the day, the Lord is good, because it's literally, it's first the blade, then the ear, then the fork in the ear, for a reason. Because he doesn't just give you more than you can handle in a moment. He's giving you the capacity. He knows you have the capacity. You have the capacity to be able to hold it all. But just like when you learn to walk, your legs had the capacity to be able to do it, but you just needed to take your time. Take your time. Do it a bit. Otherwise, it's just overwhelming. It's just overwhelming just to have your massive ministry just like from nothing to, here you go, here's all of it. Whereas opposed to the process of building it, the process of seeing it, the process of just moving in obedience. If he's like, write today, you write today. If he's like, put out a post today, you put out a post today. He's the one that brings the people. He's the one that brings the increase. You just do your job, and you just plant and water as he says to do. Okay, so it says, so then, neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. Yeah, it's God that giveth the increase. 1 Corinthians 3 verse 7. It's God that gives the increase. We just obey. And that was the whole journey, was just to teach us that we just obey. It's just to teach us that we're just a vessel. I just need someone who's willing to say yes. We just obey and we let God do the rest. Okay, so I'm just going to finish off with this. So, our personal election is where we finally display fruit, where we're finally fruitful outwardly. But it is a process. First the blade, then the ear, then the full corn in the ear. Then and only then can you multiply. Then and only then can you fulfill your ministry. So I really pray this is best, you guys, and I will see you next time on Word of Truth. Bye, guys.